Alright, so I'm back working on the Corona today, finally. This thing's kind of finished right now. Just did the paint, so I polished, clay barred, polished, and then did like a ceramic coating on it. Not a legit $1,000 ceramic coating, but this mother's one, and we're going to give it a go, see how long it lasts. It's just kind of like a fancy wax. I mean, it's not wax, but it's like a fancy, replacement for wax. But it looks great. So, we'll see how long it lasts. I only did finish that 2 days ago, but the paint on it looks really good, considering it's nearly 20. But anyway, back to the Corona. Finally going to fit the stereo. Now, I actually changed the head unit only a few months ago. Now, I did have an Apple CarPlay Alpine unit in here, and the issue with the Apple CarPlay is it was full touchscreen, and when this thing's in first or third, and you can imagine it's all the way up there because that's a neutral, you had no room to touch the screen, and it was just annoying. So I ended up fitting this Pioneer unit. It's like SPH 10 or 610 or whatever it is, and it has this flip out thing which actually holds your phone. So you flip that out, that thing extends, and your phone sits in there, and other than that it's just really a Bluetooth radio. So, but it's a nice little phone holder for this car, because as you can see, there's like nowhere to put anything. I wouldn't dare do a vent mount phone holder, because these vents are very brittle, and again, they're nearly 40 years old, so I wouldn't even consider it. But that works pretty well. We've got a nice set of focal KRX or K series 4-inch components in the front, and the 4-inch drivers in there, but they're currently running just off that deck, and they sound pretty average. The amp we're installing is a focal FPX 5 channel, FPX 5.1200, whatever they are. Great amp. Does nearly 800 RMS at 2 ohm on the sub channel, and then at 4 ohm does around 100 RMS for each speaker. And I'm just about done. Just about to put the seat back in, so tuned it now. There's my amp mounted. Had to move it this way just a little bit. So they cleared the seat rail, and but that fits anyway. So that's all mounted and done. So I'm about to put the seat in. If I come up the front, I've put 120 amp fuse in. It's just down there, the holder, and the cables are just split tubed as they go back. So I just stripped the Corona, which literally takes me 5 minutes, if that. So seat out, and then all 3 back pieces. So it's quite a big one there, middle one, etc. So that's all out. Now, as you can see, we do have a shelf in here that I made, which is just a piece of 3mm trimmed in black carpet, just a real simple one. When I was building the car and doing the paint and everything, I just wanted something to throw in there. And, it's done the job absolutely fine, but obviously now I want some speakers. Now, I'm deadening with STP Aero. I've got a few sheets left, just 2 or 3 little sheets. Sent to me by Best Soundproofing on Instagram. He sent me like a whole bunch of sheets, and this Aero stuff's pretty damn good. I'd say it's as good, or if not better, than Dynamat or Stinger Roadkill. So it's pretty nice to work with. But I just thought I'd show you, as I've just done one little piece, so probably nearly half the shelf, and so. Definitely hear the difference. So anyway, what I'm trying to do is seal the boot from the shelf, so I'm covering all the holes, and because the whole actual install, which will be coming through here, is going to be a 4th order bandpass that I'm going to try and seal off from the boot, so all bass is just going into the car. So I'm definitely trying to, as I do this, seal everything, and same with when I do the actual install, it'll be up against this, trying to seal it into the vehicle. And there's every single bit of deadener I actually had on me used. So I've done the entire shelf down the side here, and then here there was a hole very similar to this one, but that seat doesn't actually flip, so that was just a hole. So I've deadened over that, which seals that off from the back, and then obviously deadened through the center there, around, up, and everything. And I also had some of the STP, it's kind of like a 6mm foam, which I've just used, as you can see, every So fourth, there'll be 20 centimeters ever, just to stick the speaker wires. So obviously I got a speaker wire for the rear left and for the rear right. So I've just ran that across the shelf, and that's that. Anyway, call that a day in here, and I'm going to go and start building something. Obviously this shelf you won't actually see from the outside because of the louvers, the dark tint, etc. And then obviously from the inside, the seat's actually set up rather high, and again you won't see it. So I'm definitely not going to go too fancy with the actual shelf. The speakers that I'm using, on the other hand, are quite nice. These are a set of focal KRX S's, which means they're really, really thin. So these are actually the speakers, crossovers, tweeters, etc. So it's going to be like a self-contained shelf with the crossovers and tweeters and woofers all mounted in the one thing, and then obviously I'll just be having the wires hook up into it. We've got obviously focal tweeters, pretty heavy ones. These are the same tweeters that I run in the Jackaroo. We've got focal crossovers, and just some tweeter mounts, which I probably won't use, but it's got them anyway. Nice grills, they're actually like cast grills, they're really nice grills to work with. And then we've got our speaker, which is really, really thin. Little neo magnet on the back, and it's a pretty thin little speaker. So we just got a simple trace out of the old shelf, just there on MDF, and we're just going to cut that out. That's just our base. So obviously everything will be built onto top of this. Got my shelf cut out, and these are the starts of the actual shelf itself, these sides. So what I can do, absolute furthest I can bring it forward, even though the shelf itself protrudes to here, is there, because that's actually where the seats will hit this. Same with the back side of it here. This is as far back as the wood can go that way, because the glass is actually coming up like this. So it's perfect amount of room to fit the drivers in. And then I'm going to have the two crossovers sitting in the center, and the tweeters will just be on the outsides. Anyway, so here's my rough outline frame. So the two woofers sitting like that, they're actually in the same spot. This just obviously has that notch, but they're in the same distance in. And then the two crossovers. And there we have the enclosure with the top on it, and I just went around that with a router and flush trimmed it, and then given it a quick sand. So that's all finished. Still not attached to the bottom though. As you can see how she sits in there. Now that top piece actually goes right up against the glass. Well, it's actually about 3mm gap, which is exactly what I wanted, obviously, for trim. So once it's trimmed, the carpet will sit up against the glass. Now it doesn't actually matter that I've raised it 2 inches, because the louvers actually cover that much window and more anyway. So I'm not losing any vision. And anyway, that's deep enough, obviously, to enclose the speakers. And so once the seats go back in, I've just got one little piece here, because it's in 3 pieces, these seats. It sits roughly like that, and as you can see, the shelf will actually come right up against the back of the seat. I will be putting a 45 just on this as well. And I've marked out where my tweeter and woofer are going to go on each side, just like that. Now, I mean, yes, obviously coaxial speakers would have been easier, except they don't make a coaxial this thin. The thinnest coaxial is another inch taller, and it would have just hit the window completely. So this is as shallow as I could get. Alright, so I've got the main enclosure and the main box, whatever you want to call it, and the bottom piece glued, which is obviously the bottom of the actual enclosure to seal it up. So it's fully sealed all the way around. It's starting to come along. So as you can see, these will be sitting under the wood, so you'll miss all of the actual holes. I'm just clicking it in with pressure fit little clips, which are just here. So these are the male side, there's a female side, so it's a little grill clip. There's about 6 of them, so I'll just click that top panel down. And so yeah, the main drivers are hidden under there. So you can see the woofer, but you don't see the mounting screws. And then the underside of this top panel is now trimmed down like that, so it sits perfectly around the speaker and sits flush on the wood. Alright, and this is pretty much finished product. So there we have it. Tweeters and woofers are ready to go in, and I put a 45 along this whole front and around. And then with the top layer taken off, underneath we have this, The two crossovers will be sitting in there. I've got a little piece that sits in there, brings them up to flush, and then they'll be wired from there to each speaker. Wires for them will just come in from the back side. So there we are, there's the enclosure sitting there in the back. Next thing to do is trim it, but just thought I'd just do a final little test fit, but fits good. This panel, you'll only actually see the actual edges, so I've trimmed the whole front side of it, just like that, because obviously the top piece sits over it and covers the rest. So I've trimmed the front side, and now I'm just turning it round and trimming the back. I mean, you won't see the back, but I'm going to trim it anyway. The glue I'm using is Car Builder's contact spray adhesive. This has got to be, and this is as unbiased as I can say it, the coolest and the best can glue I've used. I've used a bunch of different ones, be Shelley's, be ones from J-Card, a different brand from Bunnings. They're alright, but this stuff, it sprays out really well. They can actually direct where it's going, and it sticks really well too. I mean, working time, I probably worked on that for a solid 5 minutes, pulling things on and off and sticking, and it was still working. I didn't use any nails or staples in that either, that's just the glue. And that's carpet, which is, you know, heavy-ish. So anyway, moving on, I'm just going to spray a line of it here and just show you how it sprays out, because it's really cool. It's super cool. All our sides trimmed, and now I'm going to get the actual top beauty panel and trim that. As you can see, I've mounted that piece of wood in there as well, which is what the actual crossovers will be mounting to. This is the back of the top panel, which is now done. The little clips are in, so I smack them in there, and then I even just put a little bit of glue around them just to make sure they're not going to come out, the actual clips. And there's the top side, obviously, just simple carpeted, needs a vacuum. That's that pressed together, and that is completely on there. That's just the 6 clips holding that in, and that is the shelf as a finished panel. So obviously now just going to pull it back off and fit the tweeters and the woofers, and wire up the crossovers in there. I have the woofers mounted now into the enclosure. I've got the crossovers also mounted in there and fully wired, and I've got the wires ready for the tweeters. Tweeters mounting last from the top. So this panel's ready to be mounted on, and before I do that, actually I'm just going to run a bead of foam, as I said, around that, so it sandwiches on and makes that a seal up, so it seals the enclosure. But other than that, that's it. So again, it doesn't look fancy on this side at all because it's not trimmed fully, but if I trimmed it fully, then I was going to have more height issues because I was going to lift the woofers up, and then my cutout under there would be wrong. Alright, and here we have finished product without a vacuum. So woofers are in, panels on, which is completely mounted on there, tweeters flush mounted in, pressed into the top, and it's as simple as that. Again, it's a super simple thing. The hidden crossovers are in there as well, wires straight out the back, just going to the wires I pre-ran. But the main thing is it's a nice enclosure, sealed enclosure for the 2 woofers, and hopefully I'm going to get some pretty decent mid-bass out of it. Hopefully better than I would have got, you know, cutting holes through the shelf and doing it that way. But I really didn't want to have to do that, so I'm much happier that it's like this. So there's the enclosure installed, black carpet just like that in the back, and so I've given this all clean, a vacuum and everything, so the seats are ready to go back in. But that's a fully deadened shelf. Enclosure sits there. It is not mounted in any way, shape or form, but again, it's that tight a fit that it will go nowhere, because the back of it just touches up against the window, the sides are right to the sides, and obviously the seat's pressing it from the front, so it's got nowhere to go, and that's that. And honestly, that's probably enough of that you want to hear, because yeah, royalty-free crap. Anyway, they sound pretty good though. Honestly, I reckon there's more vocals in here than there is in the Jackaroo, and like it's got the same tweeters, like K-splits in the front with the standard woofer, and then the 6.5-inch coaxials in the rear, but because they're firing straight into the glass, that sound bounces straight back forward towards the front, so it's pretty loud in here, considering, and it's even got a smaller amp. It's still a focal 5-channel, but the amps in the other car are still bigger. I mean, at seat height, you can't actually see anything. You have to be looking down to actually even see it, and that's all I wanted. So, simple in the back there,
And again, nothing too fancy. It's kind of pointless if it was, because you can't see anything through those louvers on that angle looking down. And you know, I've got the camera pretty much pressed against the roof, so you'd have to have your head right up against the roof to look down in there anyway. But anyway, it sounds good. It all goes back together. Car's ready to roll. And just a little look here from the back, and obviously I can still reach in, pop my seat forward, and click it back up. Cool.